broadcasting live from an undisclosed location. This is the TCMMA podcast with your host, Chris Cross.
UFC 300.
Yes! Yes!
UFC 300. 300.
Whoa!
UFC 300. Yes. UFC 300 is finally here. It's finally here, man. This is like the mega card of the year. One of the biggest cards, best cards we've ever seen, and top to bottom. I mean, I've never seen a card like this where in the early prelims, like you got Cody Garbrandt versus Davis and Figueiredo. You got some other big fights in the early prelims. It's not like a normal card. Bobby Green versus Jim Miller, Jalen Turner versus Renato Moicano, Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez. That's Brazil on Brazil. That's the early prelims. All these fighters are used to fighting in the main card somewhere. Go up and down this card, and Davis and Figueiredo, main card. Bobby Green, main card. Andrade, main card. Turner and Moicano, both in the main card. And this is the early prelims. Right now, Jalen Turner, 2-1 favorite over Moicano. I like him there. Andrade and Marina Rodriguez is a toss-up. Brazil on Brazil. Even. Bobby Green's a favorite over Jim Miller. He should be. And Figueiredo's a 3-1 favorite over Cody Garbrandt. Now that's interesting. That's an interesting fight to start the night. No doubt about it. So we're getting into several predictions, previews, all that today on the show. We're also going to look at some topics like John Jones. What the heck is going on there? I'm going to read up more. I read a little bit about it yesterday, but I want to brief myself a little further before I get into it, make sure I know what the heck I'm talking about. But one thing I know that I'm good on is Conor McGregor's offer from Charles Oliveira. Right? Instead of fighting Michael Chandler, come fight me instead of Michael Chandler. And if I'm McGregor, I'm staying away from that at all costs. I'm not messing with Charles Oliveira. Please, McGregor, if you hear me, don't fight Do Bronx. That will not go well. You can fight him later, but you need some type. I don't even know about Michael Chandler. I think McGregor needs more of a tune-up fight and then start climbing his way up the ladder, because I do believe McGregor either wants to finish up his contract or wants to get back in title contention and get into a title fight. I mean, he's got all the money in the world now, right? He's doing movies. He's got other deals. He's good. He don't need to fight anymore. So what's the point? Is he really fighting for money like people say? I don't think so. I think he still wants to be legitimate. He wants to be a champion. So that's why he's coming back to fight. Now, I could be wrong, but that's how I feel. So we'll be getting into these topics throughout the show. Let's get things started with UFC 300, a big middleweight fight. Well, I don't know about big, but kicking things off in the pay-per-view. Fight 5. First fight of the pay-per-view. Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. Oh my goodness. And this is one of the heaviest favorites we've seen maybe ever. Check this out. In the middleweight division at UFC 300, you got your boy Bo Nickel coming in at 5-0, taking on Cody Brundage, who comes in at 10-5. Let's get right to it. Bo Nickel, 1 inch taller at 6'1". He's only 27 years old, entering his prime. Brundage, 29. So both guys right in there. Bo Nickel, 4-inch reach advantage, 76-72. He fights left-handed. Cody Brundage stands the opposite. He stands right-handed. Now, in terms of activity, that's Bo Nickel, 2.8 significant strikes per minute. To 1.8 for Brundage, which means Brundage doesn't really have a chance to land a KO on Bo Nickel just because he's weak in activity, unless he gets that one big pop. Now, Bo Nickel, the reason why his opponents have a tough time with him and have a low number, so, Cody Brundage, 1.8 significant strikes per minute. Bo Nickel holds his opponents below their average, well below, because he lands 11 takedowns in the course of 3 rounds so far, right? That's like 3 takedowns or more per round. Brundage can land like 1 per round too, though, so he's no stranger to the ground. Bo Nickel hasn't even had to defend takedowns yet because he's very aggressive. He's won 4 in a UFC setting, 2 in the Contender Series. Then against Jamie Pickett by submission, first round. Then he KO'd Val Woodburn, first round, 38 seconds. Forget about it. Cody Brundage, 73% takedown defense. That's great, but it won't stack up here. He is coming off wins over Zach Reese by KO. And then it was the Malkoun fight where Malkoun was way ahead 28-2 and ended up being a DQ in favor of Cody Brundage. Before that, he lost to Sadiq Dumas by decision and Rodolfo Vieira by submission. So that ought to tell you the way this thing's going. Bo Nickel should get another first-round victory. Should be a dominating performance. And I know there's a lot of talk against Bo Nickel. He's getting weak opponents, this, that, and the other. They're just grooming this guy. And they're doing it the right way. He gets to finish in the first round, in my opinion, to move to 6-0, middleweight division, UFC 300. Yeah, so we got things kicked off. I mean, that's an easy one, right? That should be a softball prediction if there's ever been one. Bo Nickel should dominate and finish Cody Brundage in the first round. Can you imagine the odds if Brundage gets a finish in the first round? I wonder what those odds are. I mean, that's crazy. 30-1, Bo Nickel, favorite to win the fight. Cody Brundage is a heavy, heavy underdog. And those are always interesting situations, but it should go the way of Cody Brundage. Make no mistake about it. Now, just for interest's sake, you got Aljamain Sterling going up to featherweight, taking on Calvin Kattar, and I really don't know how this fight is going to turn out because, it's one of those things where someone's going up in weight. Former bantamweight champion Sterling loses to O'Malley. Now he's going up. That's going to make room for Dvalishvili. But how's he going to do in the featherweight division against a legitimate fighter in Calvin Kattar? Not the top of the division, but a good entry point for Aljamain Sterling. So let's get into that right now. In the featherweight division at UFC 300, you got Calvin Kattar coming in at 23-7, taking on Aljamain Sterling, who comes in at 23-4, former bantamweight champion, lost the belt to Sugar Sean O'Malley. Now he's moving up to featherweight, which we all expected. And he's actually the favorite in this fight, but let's see if it holds up. Kattar, 4 inches taller at 5'11". He's 36, Sterling 34. Kattar's got a 1-inch reach advantage, 72-71. Both guys stand right-handed. Both guys hovering right around 5 significant strikes per minute, so the striking should be pretty even. But Sterling can take the fight to the ground, landing 2 takedowns over the course of 3 rounds. So keep that in your hip pocket. The striking is almost equal. Sterling has an advantage in the ground game, but that was in the bantamweight division. This is the featherweight. Calvin Kattar, 91% takedown defense, so hold on. He lost back-to-back fights to Arnold Allen by KO, really good fighter. Josh Emmett by split decision. And Kattar led 130-107 in significant strikes. Should have probably won that fight. Now, is Aljamain Sterling on the level of Josh Emmett? That's what you have to ask yourself. Kattar did beat Giga Chikadze by decision and lost to Max Holloway. So he's lost 3 of the last 4, but against really good opponents. Now the Funkmaster, a.k.a. Aljamain Sterling, 45% takedown defense. That's not helpful here. He lost to Sean O'Malley, but before that he beat Henry Cejudo, TJ Dillashaw, Piotr Jan twice, and actually one was a DQ, and Corey Sandhagen. I mean, he ran off nearly, 9 straight wins before losing the belt to Sean O'Malley. So Aljamain Sterling is really good, but should he be the favorite here? I'm not necessarily sure that he should. And honestly, there's probably a good chance that Calvin Kattar wins this fight. But I'm not going against Aljamain Sterling. I mean, he's still the former champ. We know Sean O'Malley's on a different level right now. Aljamain Sterling is still right near that prime window. He's not slowing down just yet. Calvin Kattar's getting a little older, but it's 36-year-old versus 34-year-old. So it's going to be a good fight. And yeah, I'm stalling a little bit because this is how close this fight is. But I like Aljamain Sterling to win this fight. He's going to have a hard time landing takedowns, but the strike game will be there. He'll actually be a little quicker actually than Calvin Kattar's used to, because that's what happened when guys move up in weight. They're usually faster at the new weight class, but not necessarily as powerful. But I still look for Aljamain Sterling to outpace Calvin Kattar to win here. Very close fight by decision. Featherweight division. UFC 300. Yeah, so just a very interesting situation moving up in division. So bantamweight division is done, at least for the next 2 to 3 years for Aljamain Sterling. Unless he loses his fight, then he's got to regroup and make a decision. But he doesn't want to fight Merab Dvalishvili. We're going to see O'Malley and Dvalishvili fight at some point here in the near future. And depending on how this fight goes for Aljo and how that fight goes with O'Malley, if O'Malley wins and Aljo loses, I wouldn't put it past Aljo to go back to bantamweight. So we're just going to have to wait and see how all this plays out. But a win here could propel him into the rankings of the featherweight, and then he can call out one of the top contenders. And that's kind of what's on the line in this fight. And that's why it's interesting. That's why it's interesting, to say the least. Now, as we move forward, jumping into 2 big lightweight fights. So let's look at the rankings right now. Champion, Islam Makhachev. Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan are fighting 1 versus 4. Gaethje is fighting Max Holloway. He's number 2. Big opportunity for Holloway. So let's get into the lightweight division. And actually, let me tune this up first. Which one do we want to go with first? I say we go with the more interesting one, really, is Oliveira versus Tsarukyan, because both of these guys are legitimate lightweights. And I'd say UFC fans are split 50-50. So let's get into that one right now, if we can get there. In the lightweight division at UFC 300, you got Charles "Do Bronx" Oliveira coming in at 34-9, taking on the up-and-comer Arman Tsarukyan, who comes in at 21-3. Now, Oliveira, the former champ, is 3 inches taller at 5'10". He's 34. Tsarukyan, just 27. Oliveira, 1-inch reach advantage, 74-73. They both fight right-handed, and they're both just over 3.5 significant strikes per minute. Now, the differences: Oliveira gets like 2 takedowns over 3 rounds. Tsarukyan averaging more than 1 takedown per round. So Oliveira's takedown defense is important, and it's just 55%. That's not a good look. But he's okay once he gets to the ground against everyone against Islam. So we'll see here against Tsarukyan. Now, he dominated Beneil Dariush with a first-round KO following the loss to Makhachev, which he lost to by submission to lose, to lose the belt. Before that, he beat Justin Gaethje. We know how good he is by submission. Dustin Poirier submission. So he's a lot like Max Holloway in the featherweight division. He beats everybody but the champ. Now, Tsarukyan, who, only loss came against Mateusz Gamrot by decision. But since then, he's beaten Beneil Dariush KO first round. That's why this matchup is here. Same finish. Joaquim Silva by KO and Damir Ismagulov by unanimous decision. So this is the ultimate matchup. It's a very interesting matchup. It's going to be a very competitive fight, one that can go either way. Oliveira will be tested on the ground, weak takedown defense, and Tsarukyan's going to shoot for takedowns. But will he be able to dominate Oliveira on the ground? That's a big question mark. I can't wait to see that. But listen, we got Charles "Do Bronx" Oliveira as number 6. That's right, number 6 on the do list. So you already know who I'm going with. I can't go against "Do Bronx." I want to see him fight Islam again, and that fight's going to happen in the future, hopefully. But Oliveira wins in dominating fashion, likely on the feet with a big KO early in this fight. That's what I think is going to happen. Oliveira dominates to move to 35-9, lightweight division, UFC 300. Yeah, and I've had an interesting conversation with a few people on this fight, and both the 2 people I spoke to go on opposite ends. One for Oliveira, one for Tsarukyan. I'm for Oliveira. The gentleman that believes that Tsarukyan will win believes that he'll just dominate the ground. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. "Do Bronx" is good on the ground too. And he takes a pounding and finds ways to win. But Tsarukyan is on the march, and everybody wants to see Tsarukyan versus Makhachev. So that's what makes this fight highly interesting. And quite frankly, it can go either way. Now, let me peek at the odds real quick before we move on. I would say it has to be really close. Wow, this is fight 4. Tsarukyan more than a 2-1 favorite. Interesting. Very interesting. I don't know about that. Now, as we march forward in the same division, lightweight division, actually there's 3 of them. So let's get to Turner versus Moicano. This one, what is this, like 10 versus 13 or somewhere along those lines? This is going to be a very interesting matchup in this division. Check it out. In the lightweight division at UFC 300, you got Jalen Turner coming in at 14-7, taking on Renato Moicano, who comes in at 18-5. And you hear these records, and you should think to yourself, how is Turner a 2-1 favorite. He's 4 inches taller than Moicano, standing at 6'3". That's tall for a lightweight. He's just 28 years old. A lot of time left. He's just entering the prime window. Renato Moicano, 34. Turner's got a 5-inch reach advantage. He fights left-handed. Moicano fights right-handed. Turner lands 6 significant strikes per minute to 4.4 for Moicano, but Moicano can land nearly 2 takedowns every 3 rounds, and he's going to utilize those takedowns to kind of stifle the tarantula, Jalen Turner. But Turner's got a 75% takedown defense. In his last 2 fights, he hasn't given up any takedowns, but if you want a comparison against Mateusz Gamrot, he gave up 4, and that really hurt him in that split decision loss. But he came back in his last fight and beat Bobby Green by first round KO, which was highly impressive. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming because Bobby Green is a warrior, but he beat him. So in his last 3, he's 1-2, lost 2 of the last 3, but to Dan Hooker and Mateusz Gamrot, 2 really good fighters. Now Moicano, 72% takedown defense. Coming off wins over Drew Dober by decision and Brad Riddell submission. So he's looked a lot better in the last 2 fights. Lost to RDA, beat Anthony Hernandez and Jai Herbert. So he's rolling right now. Moicano's getting back into good form. He's 18-5 on paper, and in terms of records, it looks like he should win. But I think Jalen Turner's just going to simply outstrike Renato Moicano in what should be a great back and forth, good fight in the best division in the UFC. But I got to go with Jalen Turner because of the significant strikes and the decent takedown defense. If it's like the Mateusz Gamrot fight and Renato can take him down and control him, limited striking, there's an avenue for him to win. But I like Jalen Turner with the reach to prevent that from happening, and the fact he KO'd Bobby Green was impressive. So I like him to win and continue winning, to be honest with you. In my opinion, he's going to win by decision, move to 15-7, all on significant strikes, lightweight division, UFC 300. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Tarantula, a.k.a. Jalen Turner. I like this guy. And very easily can make a run in this division. He's had some big wins and then a few setbacks by split decision. So, the sky's the limit for him too. Renato Moicano is always a tough out, and he's capable of making a run at any time as well. So, highly interesting fight. We can't find the Gaethje versus Holloway prediction. I'm going to have to dig that up. But the bottom line is we got Gaethje winning that fight, although I'll be very happy if Holloway wins. If he's all of a sudden ranked 2nd or 3rd in the lightweight division and Oliveira beats Sarukian, he'll be number 2. I mean, it's crazy. Then you got Poirier versus Makhachev. It seems like that's going to be a done deal. And it's like Gaethje got set up with this, BMF belt and has to wait on the title and now has to beat Holloway to get there, even though he already won the last fight to get there. So, it is what it is. Now, before we get into the light heavyweight matchups, which are the most intriguing on this card, especially in the main event with Jamahal Hill and Alex Pereira, you got Jon Jones in the news in a bad way again. And I'm going to keep this very vanilla. The situation is the UFC switched over to a different testing company, right? And they can show up and test you at any time on any given day. And you got to be ready. From what we're seeing, something allegedly happened between Jon Jones and the testing agent, who was, I believe, a female. She's making some accusations. Jon Jones is releasing statements, and that's where this thing is at. Something happened. How bad it was, that's remains to be determined, and there will probably be a court case over this. So either way, for Jon Jones, this is not a good thing. And unfortunately, because of his past and the court of public opinion, he's probably going to be guilty first and not guilty once it's proven. And when I say proven, it's just proven that he's not, not necessarily innocent, but he's not guilty of whatever these charges will be. But it's not a good look for Jon Jones, and it's definitely unfortunate, to say the least. So, we'll have to wait and see how this thing plays out. Jon Jones, I'm sure, will continue denying the allegations. Why wouldn't he? And we'll see how it weighs in the court of public opinion over time. But right now it appears that it's not really a good look for him at all. At all. Now, as we continue marching forward, let's look at the due list briefly, right? Of course, Hamza is 1. Here's where it gets interesting. You got Pereira versus Jamahal Hill, 4 versus 8. Big question about Jamahal Hill's early return. Adesanya there rounding out the top 10. You got Oliveira at 7. That's why we like him to win against Sarukian. And then Dricus is 11, which is crazy. All right, now we got Yuri Prochazka at 13, and he's fighting Alexander Rakic. So Yuri Prochazka versus Rakic. And we haven't seen Rakic in a while. This division is loaded when everybody's healthy. Right now it's Rakic and Jamahal Hill getting back, and that pretty much brings everybody back. Yuri had a fight, he's back. All 3 guys injured at some point, rehabbing, and are back. So what's going to happen here? It's Alexander Rakic's time to return, and it's Prochazka who will be in his second fight. So that's going to help him a lot. So how will this prediction go? Let's get into it. It's a very close fight. In the light heavyweight division at UFC at 300, you got Yuri Prochazka coming in at 29-4, taking on Alexander Rakic, who comes in at 14-3. This was a fight that we expected to see like 2 years ago. It never happened. Both guys are back. It's a shame it's not for a title. But Rakic, 1 inch taller at 6'4", both guys 31. Yuri, 2-inch reach advantage, 80-78. Both guys stand right-handed. Now the difference is, Yuri has an advantage in activity, insignificant strikes, 5.3 per minute, just 4 for Rakic, but both guys a little bit above average. In terms of the takedown game, both guys are going to land less than 1 takedown over the course of 3 rounds, so don't expect a lot of that in this fight. It's going to be a stand-up striking affair. Now, Yuri, 68% takedown defense, right there about average. He lost to Pereira for the title by KO. Now, he did beat before that a lot of guys, right? Glover Teixeira, Dominic Reyes, Volkan Oezdemir, to name a few. Right now, he's 3-1 in the UFC. On the other hand, Rakic, again, making the return, 90% takedown defense. Even more of a reason to keep this fight standing. Now, he did get beat in his last fight by Jan Blachowicz, 3rd round KO. Prior to that, he beat Thiago Santos by decision and Anthony Smith by decision. So this fight is pretty simple to me. You know, if it would happen a few years ago, I would have took Yuri Prochazka after the loss to Pereira. I'm definitely taking Yuri Prochazka. This guy is going to bounce back. He needs a win. I don't think he starts sliding yet. This guy's got another 3, 4, 5 years. Rakic will come in a little shaky because he's coming in off the injury. Yuri's already had a fight since his injury, so he's got a big advantage here. And I think he takes care of business and gets the KO sometime in the 3rd round to move to 30-4, and it puts him back in championship contention here with the win, in my opinion. Light heavyweight division, UFC 300. And of course, you got the lightweight division and the light heavyweight division on full display at UFC 300. But these 2 fights in the light heavyweight division will determine a lot going forward. And this one is a big one. But Yuri Prochazka pulls it out because the octagon rust, ring rust, as they like to call it, won't be there for him. It'll definitely be there for Rakic. So look for a close fight that Yuri wins in this one. Now, as we march forward into the next one, another big light heavyweight fight because it's for the title. I mean, this is for the title. Pereira versus Hill. Let's get into it right now. In the light heavyweight division at UFC 300, this is your main event for the light heavyweight title. You got Alex Pereira taking on Jamahal Hill. Now, Pereira 9-2. Jamahal Hill comes in at 12-1. Both guys stand 6'4". Pereira, 36 years old. Jamahal Hill, 32. Right in his prime. Both guys, 79-inch reach. Now, Jamahal Hill stands left-handed. Pereira stands right-handed. So that's going to be a factor in this fight for sure. Jamahal Hill's very active. 7.3 significant strikes per minute. That's a staple of his career. Takedown game, non-existent. Pereira, 5 significant strikes per minute. Takedown game, non-existent. So this is going to be a title fight, main event that people are going to be talking about for a long time because it's a striker's delight. Now, Pereira captured the belt. Well, first he beat Jan Blachowicz, right? Then he came back against Yuri and captured the belt by 2nd round KO. And that ought to tell you that this is not going to be easy for Jamahal Hill if he's going to get the belt back. Now, sweet dreams, Jamahal Hill. Before the injury, we'll get into that in a moment, beat Glover Teixeira by decision. Thiago Santos, KO, and he KO'd Johnny Walker. So he was on a major run, captured the belt, and looked great doing it. The problem is he's coming off an Achilles injury in July, right? This fight is about 8, 9, 10 months since the injury, roughly. So he should be back to full strength, but that's no guarantee. And I think that's going to be a factor in this fight. Is he coming back too quick? The UFC needed a main event. I'm sure they're calling on Jamahal Hill. And is he rushing it to make it happen for the UFC? Don't know the answer to that question, but it's definitely a factor. I want to see Jamahal Hill win. I like Jamahal Hill. But I think a solid year after Achilles injury in MMA combat sports, when you got to be able to kick, defend kicks, you got to be able to move and slide. If you're at all slow or questioning that injury, a lot like Yuri Prochazka was, it's not going to work for you. You're not going to be at your best, especially mentally, not so much physically. And therefore, I'm leaning towards and going with Alex Pereira to win this fight simply because of that. And that'll be the talking point going forward. So I think Pereira wins this fight. I don't know if it'll be a KO. Jamahal Hill is really tough. But if Pereira catches you, it could be a KO. If Jamahal Hill catches you, it could be a KO. So it's going to be one of those fights, and it's going to be highly interesting. But I'm going with Alex Pereira on the simple fact that I don't think Jamahal Hill is 100%, and he's coming off the injury in a world-class title fight. Pereira wins by either KO or decision to move to 10-2 and keep the belt here. Light heavyweight division, UFC 300. Man, I can't believe I got to go against Sweet Dreams, Jamahal Hill. I like this guy, but this fight can really go either way. In the lead up and the announcement to this, remember, it took all that time for the UFC to make an announcement on 300, especially the main event. And it was make or break, which I think was crazy because, I mean, I get it. The main event tells you everything, but the whole fight card is ridiculous. And when this fight was announced, people weren't necessarily happy with it, but I loved it because when you look at the takedown, it's almost non-existent, and it's two guys that land right around 6 or more significant strikes per minute, and it's just going to be a straight striking affair, and someone is likely to go down. Someone's likely to go down. Or we're going to get 5 rounds of action. It's definitely going to be the fight of the night. So how do you not like this main event? I mean, you know, I get it. You want like a big name. People want a McGregor on there, or, you know, some of the old faces of the game to come back. We don't need all that. Pereira versus Hill is the best potential main event. And we said if it wasn't Hamza or Pereira, that would be a problem. So when Pereira was announced, I had to stick to what I said and say, hey, this is going to be a great main event. And I stick by that. Now, some other fights we didn't cover, like Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison, that has big implications. Can Holly Holm stifle her in the return? I think she does. Then you got Yan Xiaonan versus Zhang Weili, China versus China. That's going to be a big-time fight, and that really is a toss-up. That can go either way, in my opinion. And it's too bad it wasn't in China, where either way they walk away with the title. Win, lose, or draw. China walks away with the title. So it's disappointing that can't happen. And this fight will be like the one that people will dismiss the most in the main card, but it's a highly intriguing fight, to say the least. But all in all, UFC 300 is stacked up to be one of the best, if not the best, event in terms of strength of the card. Kicking it off with Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt. I just don't see. I mean, that's the first fight of the night, and it doesn't stop from there. So how this isn't the best card of all time, I don't know. You got to get on board with it and say it is. We're about to witness history this week at UFC 300, and I can't wait. But listen, you know what that means. We're going to be back later in the week. Get your comments in on all these predictions and fights, and we'll react to those here in a couple days. For now, this is your boy Chris Cross. Hope you have a great day, and God bless, as always. Peace.